Good afternoon. We're back to proceedings of the Presidency Culture Symposium, focusing on the Malta-UK culture relations. And we will proceed now to the third session, the afternoon session, that will be moderated by Professor Alan Daydoun from the Faculty of Science at the University of Malta. We also have an introductory address by Baroness Patricia Scotland that will be a registered video message. And then we also have Joe Lomas from the United Kingdom's, who is the United Kingdom's government envoy to the Commonwealth. So we can start perhaps with the video message by Baroness Scotland and then proceed with inviting Professor Daydoun to chair the session.
Distinguished guests, colleagues and friends, I'm delighted to have been invited to share a message with you for this fantastic symposium celebrating the unique relationship between two special countries, which finds great strength in your cooperation through our Commonwealth family. It was wonderful to see President George Vella and Prime Minister Sunak together in May at the Commonwealth Leaders event ahead of the coronation of King Charles III, the head of the Commonwealth. That was a special day in a special year for our Commonwealth, with the year of the youth, the year of peace, and the 10th anniversary of our Charter. In a world of change and challenge, it was a meaningful reminder that the power of the Commonwealth Association, the strength of our principles, and the nature of our advantages give us almost limitless potential as a family of nations. And the discussion held by leaders served as an emphatic renewal of our collective resolve to utilize the great qualities of the Commonwealth to rise to the economic, environmental, and security challenges of today, and to harness our shared potential to seize the opportunities of tomorrow, especially for our 1.5 billion young people. Our Charter is clear. The future success of our Commonwealth family rests with the continued commitment and contribution of our young people, and the commitment of all Commonwealth leaders to their advancement was unequivocally expressed during our meeting. For our young people, there is no greater challenge than climate change, and no greater priority than delivering a peaceful, sustainable future in which they can all thrive. I have said many times that we do not only inherit the earth from our ancestors, we borrow it from our children. And right now, we know our debt to the future is unacceptably high. This is of profound importance in the Commonwealth. Our family of 56 nations is spread across 5 continents and all the great basins of our one shared ocean. We are 2.5 billion people, almost a third of humanity, and 60% of our Commonwealth is under the age of 30. The discussions and decisions of our leaders will shape the future, and young people are disproportionately affected by climate change. So it is vital that the voices of young people are heard. And over the 50 years of the Commonwealth's Youth Programme, we have created platforms and processes to enable that to happen, especially through the 13 Pan-Commonwealth youth networks engaged in advocacy and action on critical development issues, and through our Commonwealth Youth Council. These networks and platforms thrive on the energy, creativity, and passion of our young people, bringing catalysts for positive change. And this work has intensified during the Commonwealth Year of Youth with a rich tapestry of programs, activities, and partnerships which have propelled our young people to the very heart of our work and action. Actions such as our Climate Finance Access Hub, which has now unlocked more than $310 million in vital finance for the countries which need it most, and action through our Commonwealth Blue Charter and the Commonwealth Sustainable Energy Transition Agenda, in which Malta and the United Kingdom play such an active role, and which now have dedicated youth platforms. The deep ties and rich relationship between Malta and the United Kingdom benefits both countries, but it also benefits our Commonwealth family as a whole. And I have no doubt that when we work together, we can rise to the challenges of today whilst building a better tomorrow. Youth empowerment, inclusion, and agency is a vital part of that mission. So I applaud you for organising such a forward-thinking symposium. I send my best wishes to President Vella as the symposium's convener and to the representatives of both governments who are taking part. I wish you well for your discussions, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you.
So I'd like to invite Professor Daydoun now and the rest of the speakers and panel participants. And I leave. And I hand over the proceedings to Professor Daydoun.
So thank you very much. First of all, I wish to thank His Excellency, obviously, President George Vella. I feel a bit humbled in the sense that I was invited to chair a session on youth. I'm not sure if I still qualify as part of this cherished cohort, but anyway, it still helps. Yes, exactly. So, but seeing from the program, obviously, the full title of this session, one cannot but comment, obviously, on the compelling nature of the themes that we're going to discuss. Because here we're grouping together youth, environment, climate, and inclusion. Obviously, these are very compelling thematics. And when I have to look at my kids, obviously, because as I said, I'm no longer such a young person. The temptation they have nowadays is to switch off, because there's so much negative news, obviously happening. Climate change. First, when I speak with my kids and young people in general, they tend to switch off because obviously we as scientists have a duty to state the facts, and the facts obviously are not that nice, obviously, because the warming trend is unremitting, is relentless. But the temptation to actually give up and to be resigned, is there, and it's something that we should obviously fight with all our might, because we need obviously to stand to such a monumental challenge that is climate change. Something else before I pass on obviously to my distinguished panel, a few points which were mentioned by Her Excellency as well in her address. She mentioned the Blue Charter. The Commonwealth, as you might be aware, has this very important program called the Blue Charter, within which Malta plays a very active role. My portfolio, if I have to call it like that, deals with ocean governance. So I assist our country on issues dealing with ocean governance. Malta has a very long heritage going back to the 50s and 60s with one of its distinguished guests, who was Arvid Pardo, who obviously sowed the seeds of the Convention of the Law of the Sea, UNCLOS, before which the ocean was basically the Wild West. And this topic is still highly relevant today due to something which came of age, which is seabed mining. All of us depend on our daily lives, depend a lot on our mobile phones, on our laptops. The manufacture of such technological devices obviously requires precious metals, of which the Earth is running short of, and of which there are huge deposits at the bottom of the sea. Obviously, this raises a lot of ethical conundrums, because obviously we're venturing into a part of the sea, the deep sea, which has never encountered human intervention before. So it's the last wilderness on this planet. In fact, we know much more about the surface of the moon, much more about the surface of Mars, and we've mapped more of Mars than we've mapped the bottom of our sea. Okay, so this is something obviously that it's dominating the international scene. You might have followed what was happening at the BB&J conference proceedings over the past, I would say, 15 years, whereby the world was trying to get together to find a meaningful agreement and a set of rules and regulations, okay? So that no multinational company, no country decides unilaterally, I want to go down there, exploit without any responsibilities for future generations. Most of these precious metal accumulations are far from sight, and therefore people would say far from heart as well. And these are the sort of questions that there is no quick answer to. Okay, if obviously we are trying to urge people to go electric, to electrify our vehicles, our vehicle fleet, and so on, which is well and good, because obviously it helps to mitigate, not eliminate, because you cannot mitigate greenhouse emissions. But at the same time, the material for those batteries, car batteries, contain these precious metals, and therefore we need to go and excavate the bottom of the sea somewhere else on the other side of the globe. And this thematic is very relevant to a large number of Commonwealth countries, because, as Her Excellency was saying, there's a large number of SIDS, small island developing states, who are members of the Commonwealth. Most of them are in the Indian Ocean, Caribbean, and Pacific Ocean. So just imagine this scenario, which can happen quite, it's quite feasible that it could happen, plausible. You would have a company which is excavating at the bottom of the sea, far away from land, in the middle of the sea, and discharging the sludge, because there will be a lot of sludge then. They need to separate the water from the sediment. And that sludge will disperse over hundreds and thousands of kilometers, entering the crystal clear waters of an island nation which depends on tourism, which thinks it will escape scot-free from the impacts, but will still get impacted. This is just one, so of the many scenarios out there. So obviously we need to tread carefully and not make the same mistakes that we've done on land, whereby we are mining the Amazon and other places, which are rich in biodiversity and so on, to do the same mistakes in the ocean and so on. Okay. So sorry for that lengthy preamble. But it was I think it was a good excuse to let as well our last participant to join in, to sneak in, so, sorry, Mark, I had to say, normally I'm the one to be late, so there's another scapegoat for one, so good. So I'll start by obviously introducing the members of my panel. Okay, on my left, and sorry if I had to read from the card, but I have a very short memory. Joe Lomas, who is UK Commonwealth Envoy, who obviously will be speaking to us about the relevance of the Commonwealth today. In today's, I would say, highly dynamic world, we all read what's happening, in many continents around the world, especially in Western Africa at the moment, But what the relevance of the Commonwealth today? Then we have, I would dare to say, two activists on our panel. Rebecca Reginiano, I hope I got your surname well, okay, who recently availed herself of a positive experience through the Commonwealth Society, and she will be telling us all about that, and obviously as well how she thinks that will help her future work on sustainability in Malta. And Mark Gagliapach, who is a close, I dare to say close friend, because I follow him as well quite closely on social media, all the valid work he does. I'm not going to give the game away for now. I'll let him explain when it comes to his turn, because he's doing some tremendous work in the field of ocean literacy, but also intervention, direct intervention to help conserve our seas. Okay, so Joe, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, delighted to be here today at this important symposium. It's actually my very ashamed to say, but I already know I'm going to be back to explore the amazing history and culture. I hear the diving is spectacular, so lots of reasons to come back. Great to be at the symposium. I think it speaks not only to the strong UK-Malta relationship, but also to Malta's commitment and belief in the Commonwealth. And Your Excellency, you spoke very eloquently about your Malta's commitment this morning. Chogam 2015 was a great success, and it left the UK with very big boots to fill when we came to organise our own Chogam in 2018. And we're very grateful to Malta for the seamless cooperation and for the ongoing work that we do with you as members of the small Europe group within the Commonwealth. Now, I'm often asked, what does the Commonwealth have to offer in these modern times? Why does it even exist? And if I'm frank, it's not an organisation that we would create today. It is a product of its history, but it's going from strength to strength. There are a number of countries lined up to join. We had 2 new members last year, so clearly it's doing something right. The UK considers the Commonwealth to be a vibrant and diverse network. I mean, it brings together some of the large industrialised countries, some of the tiny island states, and everything in between. And it gives a voice to those who might not otherwise be heard, and it ensures they're better represented on the world stage. We think it's important to supporting an open and resilient international order, promoting democracy, sustainable development, enabling cross-border trade. As we live in an increasingly turbulent world where autocracy is on the rise, the Commonwealth can and should act as a buffer to some of those more malign influences. So we're deeply committed to the Commonwealth, and we will continue to support a wide range of initiatives as the largest donor to the Commonwealth intergovernmental organisations. But we mustn't take it for granted. The Commonwealth does face challenges, dwindling funding, a panoply of interests, a bit of a lack of focus. It's a consensus-based organisation, which is always going to make things tricky, and sometimes that means that the decisions it makes can be of the lower common denominator. So what I want to do is just set out a little bit the UK's priorities. I've hinted that often it's too easy for the Commonwealth to be like a Christmas tree with lots of baubles which don't always amount to very much. So it's really important. We must prioritise. And in our view, we should prioritise in those areas where the Commonwealth has a comparative advantage and a track record where it can genuinely make a difference and deliver real benefits to citizens. For the UK, those priorities are supporting the values agenda, tackling climate change, and increasing trade and investment. Now, I'll talk about those in a bit more detail, but there's a thread running through those priorities, which is, first of all, support to small island developing states, or SIDS, which make up almost half of the Commonwealth. Everything that we're doing, in particular, supports SIDS. And then there's youth, of course. In this year, Commonwealth Year of the Youth, 60% of Commonwealth citizens are under 30. I'm afraid it's only 25% on our panel this today, but don't forget that youth everything that we do in the Commonwealth is really for the future of the young people of the Commonwealth. And it's important not to forget that. So just quickly on values, all of the Commonwealth members have committed to uphold the shared values which are enshrined in the Commonwealth Charter. We celebrated its 10th anniversary this year, and the Charter commits us to democracy, good governance, human rights, the rule of law. We support things like the Commonwealth's election monitors, the Secretary-General's good offices role, which helps diffuse political tensions, some great work supporting gender equality. We would like to see the Commonwealth supporting LGBT rights more, to be frank. It's been a challenging issue in the Commonwealth, but I look forward tomorrow to discussing this with some Commonwealth advocates at a human rights conference, and I know that Malta supports that agenda. On climate change, and the President again spoke very eloquently today on using the Commonwealth to tackle climate change. The Commonwealth has always been a strong advocate on climate change and protecting the natural environment, particularly for SIDS, and we continue to support things like accessing climate finance and providing an advocacy platform for members. And on trade, the UK is committed to strengthening inter-Commonwealth trade and investment. There are 2.5 billion consumers in the Commonwealth, so an important global market, and our shared language and institutions create what we call the Commonwealth Advantage, which reduces the overall cost of trade between us by 21%. But we can, of course, do more. Just to conclude, ladies and gentlemen, last year saw the sad death of Her Majesty the Queen, who knew and loved Malta so well. It was the start of a new era, with His Majesty the King as a new head of the Commonwealth, and I've been really struck by His Majesty's deep and long-standing relationships with many Commonwealth leaders, and by his real commitment and vision to the Commonwealth. So I'd like to end with a quote from him, because at CHOGM last year he summed up what I've been trying to say, but much more eloquently. He said, "Let ours be a Commonwealth that not only stands together, but strives together, in restless and practical pursuit of the common global good." Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you. I think that was a very insightful and moving speech, which sets quite nicely the context for this a seminar, why we're here, and so on and so forth, and the relevance of the Commonwealth, because it might such a relevance might not be obvious to all. So I think it's something that needs to be emphasized through references to practical work that is being done by the Commonwealth and the ideals that are being promoted by the Commonwealth. You rightly mentioned climate change, and through the Blue Charter as well. There's a lot of work happening on the ocean and so on. So yes, I think that's something which needs further and further stressing. Okay, good. So you're next, Rebecca, and. As I said in my preamble, you recently had an experience through one of the Commonwealth many channels which are available, open to youth, okay, to members of the youth and so on. So can you please tell us in your own words how this experience, how you availed yourself of this experience, what this experience basically was, what did it entail, what was it all about, okay? And how, most importantly, do you think such an experience will help you, okay, to actually assist Malta, this is a tall order now, assist Malta, in its environmental agenda. You know that obviously Malta has a lot of caveats when it comes to the environment. We're basically more than 500,000 people on an island 20 by 10 kilometers. So, it's a pretty crowded place. And that brings a lot of challenges when it comes to sustainability. So, the floor is yours.
So, like you were just saying, I form part of the Commonwealth Society, and I was privileged enough to be accepted into the society. And what happened was, they were so grateful, we were so grateful to be invited to their home. So we went to the UK, and we got to see their projects and what they've been up to. And then they were invited to our home. And we got to take them around Malta, and we were going through different activities of activism and the environment. And I was, even though I've been living here for 21 years, I was shocked at the things we've been doing, and it made me happy. It made me feel like I could stop holding my breath, and I could finally relax and be like, wow, there are people here that are working and striving towards a better change for the future. And as you said, even though this is the youth panel, I feel like it's nice to see someone older who takes initiatives, because there has been a mentality where it's like, it's not my world to care for anymore. And I find that to be a very wrong mentality, because, for your grandchildren or your great-grandchildren, it's whomever, to be honest, it's a world that we were lucky enough to be able to be living on. It's a Goldilocks planet. And I'm so humbled by that I'm sitting here with all of you, and that you are you know very well of our oceans and our seas. And it's really important to know these things, because 60% of our oceans create our air to breathe. Some of the animals in the water, our marine life, are the closest to finding medicines for us, or the closest to immortality, which is insane to even fathom. And like you said, there's only 5% of what we've mapped on our floors. So you can only imagine what's left to find out. And for us to constantly be ruining or destroying something for short-term advantage is very detrimental. So I was very grateful for when the Commonwealth Society came to Malta and was showing me NGOs who were working towards a better society for Malta. And I was so happy and grateful that we worked on 3 main projects. It was divided into 3. We had the ocean, we had growth through the environment, and we had transportation. Now, I have quite a passion towards oceanology, but I wanted to push myself in a situation where I didn't know much, and I knew it was a big problem in Malta, which is transportation. We have a very hot climate. It is very difficult to cycle, so that definitely couldn't be something I could just instantly say, you know, let's all cycle, let's stop using our cars. It's physically impossible, really, because of the heat and how our structured roads are created. So I had this ability to think, okay, I can't tell, Malta to buy new electric cars because it's not in my right to tell you what you can and cannot buy. And like you said yourself, even though electric cars help certain things to be destroyed, there is also room of improvement with regards to the batteries, which is also really, really detrimental to our environment. So then I was thinking, and I was with my peers, and the Commonwealth Society helped me, and I thought of the even and odd scheme. It made me research into sustainability on transportation. And I know our big problem in Malta is that we're one person in each car. And we are such a small country, so why is it that we're one person in one car when we all live near each other, when we all know each other? So I researched and I found the even and odd scheme idea where, depending on the day it is, your number plate, if it starts with an even number, you can drive on certain days, and vice versa if it's an odd day. And like this, it promotes carpooling. There's no need to use any financial means to get about this, and it also decreases 50% of the emissions in Malta. So it was exhilarating to find out that this also took place in Italy and removed the smog. And it was so insightful to understand that this could actually take place in Malta. Now, unfortunately, with regards to us being university students and deadlines, and we were such a small group, it was hard to strive and push forward for it. And you can't say nothing came out of it, but I will disagree with that, because now, even though we've stopped our projects, I am working in a company and I'm striving for the even and odd scheme in the company, and hopefully one day it will grow further. We're also working towards climate champions, which is another thing going on where, we're striving towards NGOs in Malta and make sure that they're recognized and known, for I didn't know some of them, like in Pembroke or in Busquets. And it's incredible to know that we have such a diverse wildlife, which is funny to say because when you think of Malta, you think of a big rock. So that was quite cool to think. And I'm so grateful, again, I know I keep saying the word grateful, but I am sitting with you guys, that there are people looking after our oceans and seas, because even though you might not have a passion towards it, without our seas the way they are, or oceans, we won't be able to be living here or to prosper in life. I understand that trade and money and obviously the economy is really important, but it's not the environment and the industry. They're together. Like you said, if there's going to be dirt in the water, we're not going to have tourism, and tourism is everything for Malta. So there is going to be a point, and it's come to that point, to be honest, where you cannot rebuff such consequences. We just can't. So we have to work together, even with regards to offices and the economy. It has to work with the environment. That's it. Thank you.
I couldn't agree more. Obviously, this is music to my ears, and obviously then the crux of the whole thing obviously is the implementation, because I'm pretty sure that you're coming up with excellent proposals and excellent ideas. Obviously, then the quantum leap is to put these into actions and to to convince, you know, our policymakers obviously to take these on board, and that is not easy. But anyway, the louder the voices get, obviously, at one point, you know, and I'm sorry to have to admit that I am one of those who came to this meeting with my car, and I was alone in my car. So I always start, you know, looking at myself before I obviously look at others. So I'm part of the problem. And when you get to think of it, there aren't so many alternatives. So I left from the south of the island. So even though it's a small island, from the south of the island to come here, with traffic and everything, if you're lucky, it takes you 30 minutes, 25 minutes, 30 minutes, okay? But there isn't a single bus route. I would have needed to take two buses, so probably 1 hour, 1 hour 30 to come here. Or else I would have, you know, try to take a ride with somebody, as you were suggesting. But again, I'm not trying to exculpate myself, but we need alternatives. I think we need to work on the alternatives. Because it's used as telling people, listen, you cannot drive your car for 2 days a week, 3 days a week, you need to, you know. But we need to provide alternatives. And I think that's where we need. And that would push the behavioral change that all of us need to make, because climate change, unfortunately, demands a sacrifice from all of us in terms of behavioral change. We need to change our lifestyles, unfortunately. Otherwise, as I'm a scientist, but I tend to appreciate the fact that we shouldn't just lump it on technological advances. I don't think that, you know, we will hopefully mitigate this rise in temperature just through technology. Technology will help, but I don't think it's just technology, you know, because we could abuse of technology in the same way that we were abusing of air conditioners, because air conditioners now it's a vicious cycle. It's making the climate change, you know, thing even worse, you know. So, but anyway, but as they say, hope springs eternal, and it's good that we have a youthful voice and proactive voice, you know, amongst us. Good, thank you, Rebecca. So now, Mark, it's not just youth who are proactive, okay? Mark is very, very proactive. So, you know, as you can see from his suntan, so he's in the field. He's in the field all the time. So Mark, tell us what you do, and most importantly, why you do it. Because whenever I see your posts on social media, I say, where does he get the energy from? So, please.
Oh, and first of all, excuse me, I don't have much of a voice. The reason, and excuse me for coming late, the reason is because I've been awake since 5 in the morning. I've been out on the boat till just 45 minutes ago. I was out with 7 young volunteers, 20-year-olds they work with Radisson Blue Golden Sands. Oh, thankfully they're one of my sponsors. So literally it was a rush back to Golden Sands, offload all the plastic and fishing debris that we had on the boat. Then when I got washed and all, I realized that in my bag I forgot my shirts, so I had to rush back to Sweetie, and it was being crazy. But I managed to come nearly on time. I'm without a voice because you tell me where you get the energy from. I get the energy, as soon as I'm out at sea, I get the energy. When I see our beautiful coastline, thankfully I don't have to be in the traffic because there's no traffic out there, especially on a Wednesday in September. But most of the energy I get is when I know what I'm going to accomplish, because I know that every time I go to a beach, a coastline, I know I'm going to find plastic and fishing debris and lots of litter, and I'll tell you where that comes from soon. But one of the reasons, and when I think about them, I get a bit emotional when I think about the volunteers that come with me and the hard work. I mean, it's hard to believe that just 1 hour ago I was with these 7 young 20-year-olds that come with me just thinking, we're going to pick up some plastic and do something good for the ocean. But they come and they become eco-warriors. In fact, today I'm launching my T-shirts, my new T-shirts with the new logo, and in front I wrote Eco Warriors, because that's how I think of myself and my volunteers. We're not scientists like you, and I really respect what you do. And I will never forget the words you told me when we were at the National Aquarium, where I was a panel with another 6 or 7 professors from France, Italy, yourself. And I remember turning around to you, telling you something like, I'm not supposed to be here, I'm not a professor. And you told me, Mark, you are on the front line. You are what we need to learn from. So that really motivated me even more. And these few words can really energize me to keep on going, because I know that I'm doing the right thing. And obviously, every time I go out on the ocean, on the coastline, and I see what I see, I collect what I collect, I know that I need to go again and again. And once a week, it used to be once a week for 4 months, 5 months. And luckily, I've been backed by some very good, respectful sponsors. And I'm managing to go out 2 or 3 times a week, sometimes alone. When I say alone, it's me and my dog, George, who really gives me, he's my main companion. And so what I want to say about the coast is, when people see my posts on social media, and you see a boat, a 24-foot boat, 75% of it is covered with big bags of plastic, lots of ropes. In fact, just 3 weeks ago, I had my record haul of fishing lines and ropes. It was over 500 kilos, and that's a lot for just a few hours in a day. Unfortunately, it's not getting less and less. Unfortunately, it's getting more and more. I've been doing this for 29 months. And many people say, oh, we Maltese, we need to get cleaner, we need to respect the environment more and more. But unfortunately, it's not coming only from the Maltese. Now, with my experience, with what I see, I think it is coming from Maltese, from foreigners as well, even foreigners that live in Malta, from tourists. And I'm not saying I'm dropping something by mistake and letting it go. No, I'm saying about maybe ignorance, maybe carelessness, responsibility. So it is a Maltese problem. It is an international problem. I wish someone from the government would really ask me what I find out there, because I am okay. I'm a solo person within the foundation, working with many volunteers from all walks of life, from different companies, from different entities. A lot of foreigners, like today, these 7 foreigners were from Portugal, from France, from Spain, from Italy. But unfortunately, I'm finding a lot of plastic which is coming from Tunis, from Libya. I even had some from Algeria. Obviously, we get from Sicily. I'm sure that other countries find plastic which comes from Malta. I've had a friend of mine who lives in Cyprus, and he came across a packet of twisties on the shores. And you might say, okay, how do you know that they come from Tunisia? I got to know the language, and you with experience, you start getting to know how long the plastic has been traveling in the sea. If it's a plastic which came from Gozo or from just a few miles away, or if it's traveled for hundreds of miles. So if this little rock in the Mediterranean, which from the map you can hardly put a needle on it, is getting all this plastic, all this debris, imagine how much, how big the Mediterranean is, imagine how much more there is out there. I've collected pieces of nets or bags which are used by fish farms to feed the fish. And when I collected to put from the sea, I've also released fish which are caught in it, which some of them would be dead and some of them would be alive. So I think as a Commonwealth, or maybe even with the EU, we need to study more from where is this plastic coming. Definitely, and I can say this with guarantee that at least 80 to 90% is coming from the fishing industry and from tankers and boats. They could be leisure boats. I've seen people, respectful skippers with beautiful, very expensive sailing boats, and while they're just sailing by and they'll just throw a can of beer out. I've seen that with my own eyes. I've even received reports. So that's where I get my energy from. But that's the energy from the heart. Then there's the energy which is the physical energy. Luckily, I'm an ex-water polo player. I used to play it semi-professionally. After I retired, I became a personal trainer. So sports was always part of my lifestyle. And I retired last November. I thought it was going to be a more relaxing life, but instead it's been non-stop since then. It took a toll. It's put a lot of pressure on my family, on our personal boat, because I use my personal boat to go out and collect all this trash. Financially, and but notwithstanding, I've worked very hard to make it sustainable and to make sure I can go out and keep on doing it. I must say that many people, especially in interviews I've done before, I must say that I don't know if you know that I use that energy as well to accomplish the highest cleanup in the world on Mount Everest base camp last February. I went alone and I sponsored 6 Sherpas, which are the mountain people from Nepal. They're just amazing and amazingly strong people. And while I crawled literally for 9 days up to base camp, for them it was just a walk in the park, and that made me so like, why is it so easy for them? But one of the most beautiful moments was when I arrived at base camp, and while they were literally doing the cleanup over there where we picked up, we filled up about 8 big sacks of plastic. I stood on this rock, which marks the end of the trek, with our beautiful Maltese flag with the beautiful George cross on it, which I'm so proud to have that cross on our flag. And it hurts me so much when there will be a few people who discuss whether it should be removed or not, which I know never will happen, because that represents the bravery and the heroism of our fathers and our grandfathers and the whole of the Commonwealth. And that's what the Commonwealth really means. It's solidarity, and I think the way that the Commonwealth could go forward with the environment, with the oceans, is to involve more the youngsters, because I see them I saw my team today. They went from just 7 beachgoers who had a day off from working at Radisson to becoming eco-warriors, and wow, let's please send us all your photos and videos. We want to make this and that and want to share it with our countries, what we've done and what we've accomplished. That's where I get my energy from. Sorry if I talk too much.
Thank you, Mark. It's a good thing you've lost your voice, because otherwise
I would never stop.
I'm pulling your leg. But hearing the last 2 presentations coming from Maltese citizens, you leave this room heartened, saying, listen, because we tend, being islanders, we tend to be very self-critical, but when you see that there are people on this island who live here who share, environmental ideas, positive ideas, about how they're changing the world around them in a selfless way, I believe that is cause for hope, So, but speaking a bit about plastic, and this is where obviously it ties in with the Commonwealth and everything, and plastic, like many of the problems challenging being faced by our ocean, is of a transboundary nature. So it's useless for Malta, for Italy, for Spain, whatever, having strict regulations about plastics in place when not everybody within the Mediterranean basin is on the same, is on the same page. Because, even if we had an oil spill, for example, so these challenges, these pressures don't respect political boundaries. And that's why we need concerted action. And this is where, the Commonwealth would come in, because obviously climate change, environmental problems, most of them, they cannot be tackled unilaterally by a single country. And that's why, this all fits in, because from the outset, I was thinking, but, how can we, why is the Commonwealth so relevant to the environment, to these issues? But when you come to think of it, you need a big player, which has, a wide jurisdiction, basically, and that's why, these issues which might seem of a local nature, then take on a global dimension because this litter thing is something which is afflicting most countries, most maritime jurisdictions, So, and the irony of it is that it's afflicting those countries which least produce, because when you have these isolated islands, because of the gyres, the way this global ocean circulation is, they're getting the brunt of all the plastic that we're discharging, I don't know, places like China, North America, Europe, Africa, and so on. Because of the gyres, they're getting the plastics that they're not throwing out in the sea, So that is the irony of it all, but yes.
In fact, I'd like to point out that I've got cousins, and my wife has cousins who live in Sydney, in the West Coast, that is, and next to the Gold Coast, and Australia and Commonwealth, they're super strict with the environment. I know they told me that, Mark, you would be jobless if you had to come here to do environmental work on the coast, because we have such strict and such good policing. And they've got a lot of self-discipline as well, the people. However, especially to the north of Australia, they get a lot of debris coming down from the Asian countries, from Indonesia and the closest countries, where unfortunately, as you said, there's a lot, and the currents. In fact, I was also planning to try and join one of the campaigners that the ocean cleanup. I'd love to join them. Basically, they do what I do times 100. They've got this massive ship which literally with a big net gathers so much plastic.
I think 5,000 tons in each net. They have this massive net, and every time they deploy it, it's 5,000 tons of plastic.
The plastic is 100 meters deep, and I think it's as big as the whole of France. I'm not sure if they said the whole of France or the whole of France times 2. So it's massive.
And picking up litter, because this is a question that I get from people from time to time. But okay, you're picking the plastic back from the ocean and so on. Okay, because it doesn't look nice to the eye. It's not only that. It's not just the aesthetics. We're picking the plastic whilst the plastic is still visible. Because if you leave the plastic long enough, it will start degrading, changing into microplastics, nanoplastics, and then there's no way you're going to recover the plastic, and that will enter the food chain then, because it's small enough to be eaten by the plankton, goes up the food chain, ends up on our plate. So that is, it's not just about the aesthetics, but there's also the human health aspect. So, yes, please.
Can I just add one last thing? It would be integrity, to be honest. There was a really interesting quote saying, "It's only just one straw," said 7 billion people. And until you start taking accountability for yourself, nothing would really majorly get done. And you're taking accountability, we're all taking accountability, and you are doing major improvements for the island. And imagine if we were, all of us, doing it. You just need to have integrity. If you take integrity, then we'll have a better future, I'd say.
You are so right, because with the multiplication, because before I do the cleanup, I stop in the middle. We go out of the harbour, or today I stopped between Gozo and Comino, because I did the cleanup in Gozo, and I give a little speech, who I am, blah blah blah. But what I do tell them is, at the end of this day, I always post and do photo montages, videos, reels on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, etc. And I managed to hit between 20 to 50,000 viewers. Now imagine you do the same, so it will be 1 times 8, and maybe with the people that you hit, then we're going to hit 200, 400,000 people, and then they could share your post. So I want that multiplication effect. And one thing I wanted to really add, by the way, are 2 things. First of all, I'm not even Maltese, I'm Gazettin. And I say that with proudness. Even when I'm abroad, they say, so from where are you? I say from Gozo, it's part of Malta. I say that's half a joke, but that's to show how proud I am to come from a very small island. I also, when people tell me, oh Mark, when did you realize that you're an environmentalist? I say, no, I'm not an environmentalist. Somebody like Alan is an environmentalist, like Nature Trust, who I respect a lot. Those are the true environmentalists, the quiet ones who work so hard behind the scenes. I am an eco-warrior fighting for them, for nature, and for our planet, and for my country. But I also mention that I started loving the environment. First of all, I lived in Gozo, where the environment was just outside my door. Second of all, my father used to take me out to hunting and fishing when I was just 10 years old. Obviously, the legal hunting, but that's where he would speak to me and show me how to respect nature and sustainability and to always leave the place better than I found it. And I always kept that in my heart.
Oh no, I couldn't agree more. Before I pass the floor to Jo, because I see that she was taking notes, I just want to pass a comment, because I think the litter or plastic narrative is something which we really need to capitalize on. Why? Because it has been a success story. Scientists, activists, whoever, have all managed to mobilize the public when it has come to plastic. Everybody knows, okay, there's still responsible people who throw stuff out, but everybody out there knows that it's wrong to throw plastic into the sea. So it's a message which has been driven home. So somewhere along the line, there's been success in the communication campaign. Whilst for climate change, there's still a lot of skeptics, even though the science is there for all to see. And, you see a lot of skepticism about climate change, and that muddles the message, and, it's really counterproductive, obviously. So yes, I think we should learn from the plastic litter narrative on how to communicate on other fronts, on other challenges. But please, floor is yours. Yeah.
Thanks. I was just picking up, Alan, on what you said about we can't act unilaterally here. Because it's all very well if you live on the east coast of Australia, but for countries like Malta or the UK, which have close neighbours, big shipping lanes, we're never going to be able to do enough unless we can sort of tackle the fundamental causes of that. So I give as an example, the Commonwealth work and through the Blue Charter and through other, declarations, but that's just one small part. But as an example, the Blue Charter is an area where Commonwealth countries can come together, learn lessons from each other, advocate for each other, make sure that they're sharing experiences. So lots that can be done, and that's not going to be the single answer, of course, but I think by those countries coming together, whether it's regional fora, multilateral fora, coming together, and then you have the people who are taking the action. So I think we need everything, all of those different combinations of groupings and action to be able to try and tackle this. Thank you.
No, it all fits in together. So the Commonwealth can just be a catalyst. We shouldn't then expect that the groundwork, the grassroots work still needs to be done. So we still need to have environmental champions. But obviously the Commonwealth can be the right platform, one of the platforms to obviously promote this. In the same way that, for example, Europe is pushing so much the green economy agenda, the Green Deal agenda and so on. Obviously, we need to have these global actors who are pushing the right agendas, and I think the Commonwealth obviously is one of these. So I'm not sure if there's any interventions from the floor. Yes, please.
So I'm a leader of the
very similar with youth and young people. We do a lot of cleanups. We show them how to love the environment, how to have it as one of their components in life, how to live within nature, how to camp, how to make a campfire, how to reduce plastic. We make, what else? A lot of games within nature. We show them how to feel nature, all the senses within nature. We also try to introduce a sense of creativity in that they even help us to solve these environmental problems because they have a different mindset. So there is the creativity in that aspect. We also try to I believe in Europe and even in America on the western side, we tend to overconsume a lot. And this is something which we are really not speaking about. The amount of clothes we wear, are we even considering from where our clothes are coming from? Not even clothes, food. There is so much waste. We are only speaking about what to do with the waste, but did you really have to buy the object in the first place? So these are some of the stuff which we also speak about within our youth organizations. We also, within the British sector, we also have the Duke of Edinburgh, which is an award. Okay? Within this award, we have a number of sections. So there is the physical section, by which we allow the youth and young children to explore their physical side. So they spend a couple of months or years doing some training. We also encourage them on the social side. So they explore how they can be viable within their own society. Okay, the skill, we try to teach them some of the skills. They have a journey, a 3-day journey within nature. They have to camp outside, cook outside and everything. And there is a residential project as well, where they get to camp outside and explore all that there is within nature. So we really try to give them all that there really is to explore. I'm not sure if you want to add anything more to that. No? Okay.
I think the Scouts, if I may, are doing a fantastic job, obviously, of formation with our youth. So, and I was going to comment about this earlier on. I think one of the saddest things with our youth is that they've become a bit detached from nature, in the sense that they're not given the opportunity to sample nature in the way that I used, at least when I was younger, because nature was just around the corner. Nowadays you have to drive quite a lot to be in nature, and when I mean nature, not gentrified, not the pink pavement type, so real nature, okay? Even though urban green spaces are important, so obviously I acknowledge the importance of that, because within an urban center you need to have a green center. But when, areas which are relatively untouched with native biodiversity and so on, that's sort of done. So unless we reconnect the young with nature, it's a lost battle, because it's useless advocating the conservation of biodiversity and so on when they don't have a clue of what that biodiversity is. If they haven't seen a gecko, or they don't know that in Malta we have 4 species of snakes, for example. Okay, they've never seen a hedgehog, and I'm speaking about species which are relatively easy to spot. I'm not speaking about, I don't know, the weasel, el ballotra, which is extremely difficult to spot unless you are a hunter who wakes up at 3 a.m., So it's important that we reconnect our youth, and because at the moment they're exploring, and probably His Excellency this will bring a smile to His Excellency, because I come from a field where we are trying to promote virtual reality, which is good because we can take people underwater, without getting wet by putting on these virtual. But I think virtual reality should never be a substitute for the actual experience, So many young people, the way they spend their Sunday afternoons, it's very, without being judgmental, that's very different from the way I used to spend my Sunday afternoon. So going for walks, hikes, picnics, and so on. Nowadays, young people rarely go for a picnic. They actually go for a picnic here in Malta with their schoolmates because the school organizes it during the week. And good thing that they do that, because with their family, most families, some families luckily still do that. They still, you see people, picnicking on a Sunday afternoon. But most of the young are confined indoors, playing on their tablets, whatever, which is fine. But so we need to reconnect, and the Scouts obviously is one of the venues which is doing incredible work on the front. So, Mark?
I just want to say that total respect to the Scouts. I'm an ex-Scout. I started with Victoria Scouts in Gozo, and in fact, the first time I did a cleanup, I called it an adventure because it was just COVID had just finished, and I said I need to get out of this concrete jungle of I live in Sui, so it's very close to St. Julius, Parchbastille, etc. And so I just said, okay, I'm going to go on my boat. I'm going to try and fill it up once a day with plastic or whatever I find. I had never done this before, and I want to camp on the way. So I went around the islands, camped for 3 nights. It was a fantastic experience. I ended up filling the boat 9 times in 3 days. In fact, that's how everything started, because these videos went viral, and because I exposed how it's really like on the wild coast, because I tend to concentrate, okay, it's going now. I tend to concentrate on the wilder coasts, especially between Marsash Loch to the west, former Paradise Bay, Comino, etc. Because, first of all, I love the wilder it is, the more I like it, coming from the Scouts. And because I know that the wilder it is, the more chance there is wildlife. So I say, okay, let me go where nobody goes, or where very few people go to do the cleanups. So, yes, what I can advise is, as you said, people need to reconnect with the environment, with the outdoors. Take your kids, take them out hiking, camping. The wilder the better. Just take them out to reconnect. And for example, and you mentioned, I wanted to come back to a point you mentioned about the plastic. It's true. Plastic is, even when it's not visible, it's killing. In fact, I was coming out of Comino with my boat, with my wife and my son, so I wasn't even working that day. And I saw Corey Shearwater, Scopoli Shearwater. Boats were just literally passing over it. I don't know if they didn't see it, but literally they didn't notice it or they didn't pick it up. And I realized it wasn't difficulty, so I used my water polo experience, went underwater, caught it by the legs, and I took it to Nature Trust. Sorry, not Nature Trust, sorry, National Aquarium, and then they called BirdLife to pick it up. They took care of it. It was 95%. It had only 5% chance of living, because they found out that it was poisoned by plastic, but not pieces of plastic. The plastic was in its blood, in its system. So they said it's very hard for the bird to get rid of it. Luckily, it made it after 3 weeks. I let it go. And I saved it in Comino, and it had floated from Firfla because it had a string. It had a ring, and they knew which flock it came from. Thank you.
So, any more interventions from the floor?
Just one thing.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. Just one thing about the Scouts. Please don't just take the young people, take everyone. I would love to go. And even I was seeing photos with my Nanu. I love him very much, of his past life in Malta, and it was beautiful. And it honestly put me to tears how I never got to see that. And I thought I was lucky seeing, greenery back in the day. So please bring everyone.
with Commonwealth connections and And you made a very valid point that one of the biggest complications would be if there is a mining for phosphate nodules, that they would pollute the quality of the water. And this takes me to what he was saying about Sydney. It's true that you might not find plastic, but the coral reef is dying gradually because of, rising temperatures of the ocean. And this is the point I wanted to make. We're talking about plastic pollution, but there is also the overlying issue of climate change with increasing temperatures. And the oceans being the largest living body on the globe, the temperatures have risen. And you teach me, you know as much more than I do, that if temperatures rise, even the direction of the currents will change, which will then have an impact on the quality of temperatures even on the continent. This level. Well, the point I wanted to make is that even more frightening than the Commonwealth is the fact that there is this threat of rising sea levels, and there is more dismantling of the Arctic poles. And Malta and the Security Council had one of the sessions to deal with sea level rise. Because this is far more complicated than just, the oceans going up. There are even very complex legal discussions as to what would happen with those islands that would be drowned when they lose their sovereignty. Will it continue existing? What's going to happen after that? So the issue of temperature rise and global rise in temperatures is as important, as plastic pollution. It's very, very important. So this is what the government is looking at, on a more global aspect. You're right in saying that the numbers will close to sea. Plastic pollution will definitely be more marked because it's contained. And as you know, there is very little changing in the water of the Mediterranean. It takes something like 8 years for a whole change of the waters. More so, things coming through the Suez Canal, different fauna and so on. So it's much more complicated than that, apart from the fact that the Mediterranean is one of the busiest routes for carriage of oil and cargo. So, but rising temperatures are much more threatening, especially to the countries that make up the Commonwealth.
This is a very valid point. In fact, as His Excellency is pointing out, I think Malta's first intervention at the Security Council, because Malta at the moment holds for 2 years a seat, one of the rotating seats on the UNSC. Malta made, through the Foreign Minister, an intervention on sea level rise. And there were countries who obviously raised their eyebrows because they said this has nothing to do with security, but it actually has, because it shifts the baselines. And besides the prospects of nations, island nations disappearing, you could even have obviously territorial wars being sparked off, because you have, if baselines are shifting, territorial waters obviously shift as well. So obviously you might have a shift in territorial waters, and you might have oil deposits which change hands. So jurisdictions change over that oil deposit, and we all know perhaps what's happening in the South China Sea. There's a big war happening over territoriality over there, with some countries even creating artificially islands so as to increase their territorial waters to lay their hands on oil deposits. So ocean governance
changing rocks into islands.
Exactly. This happened, incidentally, about 200 years ago, close to us, close to Sicily, when there was Graham Island. So we had Graham Island, which suddenly appeared out of nowhere, southwest Sicily, through a volcanic eruption. The Brits went to plant their flag on it, called it Graham Island. The Italians called it Isola Ferdinandea, planted their flag. The French, I think, Il Julie, so everybody has a under. And I think the Spanish as well, La Nera, the black one. But then after 3 months, 6 months, it collapsed and went back down below the flags and all. Flags and all. So there is this famous painting, in fact, the eruption, I think, or the explosion of Graham Island. So yes, so these are issues which we will have to deal with you know, and they are of a compelling nature, and you know, so it's not as simple, unfortunately, it's not just, but just liter, but at least liter, communication-wise, was a success story, communication-wise, because we got the message out there, you know, so, exactly. So, I don't know if there's anyone to mention, so, but I wish to thank, obviously, my panel. You made my job really easy, because you're so passionate about what you do. So I was a bit worried. I didn't want any, you know, gaps in the discussion, but, you know, I think actually we went overboard, and that's positive, you know. So I thank, obviously, the Commonwealth, I thank His Excellency for his patronage, and we'll call it a day.
Well, thank you, Professor Deidoun, and the rest of the panel. And a round of applause. And we're at the end of a day's proceedings. It's been a long day, but quite varied, intense at times, with interesting perspectives, new perspectives. I, for one, learned a lot. And I'll try to summarize or share a synthesis of what we have been discussing. It's not easy because there was so much in just a day, but I think we can synthesize in 3 words. The first word that comes to mind is positive. I think even this afternoon's session is a good way of looking at things. It's about the positive attitude, the can-do attitude. And I couldn't help thinking about the paradox that the Commonwealth is the legacy of our colonial period, which is anything but about activism. So it's also about how history evolves and how things change. And as my good friends who are historians here, who are with us, the only constant is change, as we say. And this is a good case in point. The other thing that comes to mind, which I thought could be synthesized in just one word, is misconception. We've heard this morning that musicians who used to play in local bands had nothing to do with the military, but then there were Maltese musicians who played in the British military bands, which is an interesting side of things. We heard about fashion and the importance of lace. Especially for the British market, you had the local British establishment who also was a good client, a very important client of all the lace, or a very good chunk of lace production that was being produced in Malta. We had also an interesting case study which referred to potatoes. We always thought that potatoes were a British import, but then we also heard this morning that they actually came to Malta earlier on. So sometimes history tends to pick and choose what to connect, and how the narrative tends to be informed in a subjective manner. And again, I mean, history is always subjective. But then the other word is rethink, and I think this symposium is a good point of departure to rethink that which we have oftentimes, and more often than not, considered to be cast in stone. There are mental models which concern our British legacy and our UK-Malta relations that perhaps might have to be looked at from a different angle and from a different perspective. And I think today has been hopefully a good point of departure. Hopefully we've sown the right seed in the right pot, and it's up to you now to take the conversation forward.